Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our ongoing study of God's kingdom. We've been journeying through Matthew chapter 5, unpacking what it truly means to be a citizen of heaven. We've learned that kingdom dwellers are a special people. They're set apart. Jesus outlined this beautifully in the Beatitudes from verses 3 to 11. These are people who recognize their spiritual poverty, their absolute need for God. They are those who mourn over sin, both their own and the world's. They are the gentle ones, the meek, who wield their God-given strength under the complete control of the Holy Spirit. They hunger and thirst for righteousness with a desperation that defines their very existence. They are merciful, pure in heart, and actively pursue peace. The full, complete shalom of God, even in the most difficult circumstances. And often, precisely because of this holy pursuit, they face persecution from a world that simply doesn't understand their desire to please God above all else. Then Jesus tells his disciples to be salt and light. On the surface, we understand this. Salt preserves and flavors a decaying world. Light pierces through moral and spiritual darkness. But to the original Jewish audience, these symbols carried a weight in history we can easily miss. The salt covenant, mentioned in Numbers 18, verse 9, wasn't just about seasoning. Salt was a symbol of permanence, purity, and an unbreakable promise that God had with his people. When God gave the priesthood to Aaron and his descendants as a covenant of salt forever, he was signifying an everlasting, non-negotiable commitment. Jesus is telling his followers to remember the covenant they have with God. As disciples, being salt means we are preservers of God's eternal, unchanging truth in a world that is actively decaying and trying to forget him. Light is embodied by the menorah in the temple and was God's symbol of God's immediate presence, his guidance, his divine wisdom. It represented the very life of God shining forth. Jesus later declared, "I am the light of the world," and then commissions us to be that light, to be a visible evidence of his presence and truth to a lost world. This brings us to our focus today, a passage that often causes some confusion. Matthew 5, 17 to 20. "Do not think I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter nor the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law, until everything is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven." Wow, that sounds intense, doesn't it? How could our righteousness possibly surpass that of the Pharisees? Weren't they the ultimate rule keepers? They had created an entire secondary set of regulations, what they called a fence around the Torah, with over 613 commandments designed to prevent them from even coming close to breaking God's law. They were meticulous, disciplined, and outwardly flawless. Yet Jesus said people were burdened by their rules, and that's precisely the point. The Pharisees' righteousness was external. It was about performance, adherence, and most damningly, a means to achieve status and justify themselves before God and man. But Jesus says he came to fulfill the law. The Greek word used here is pleiero, Strong's G 4137. It doesn't mean to follow perfectly, so we don't have to, and it certainly doesn't mean to destroy. It means to fulfill, to complete, to bring to its intended purpose and meaning. Strong's Concordance says to cause God's will, as made known in the law, to be obeyed as it should be, and God's promises, given through the prophets, to receive fulfillment. Jesus is the ultimate interpreter and the ultimate embodiment of the law. He is its living fulfillment. Think of it like this. The law was a shadow, a blueprint. Jesus is the actual substance, the finished building. The law was a diagnosis. It clearly identified the cancer of sin. Jesus is the cure, providing the only remedy. This is why he could say in Matthew 5:21, "You've heard it said to the people long ago, but I say to you." He wasn't contradicting the law. He was excavating it, revealing its deepest heart-level intent that the Pharisees had completely missed with their surface-level rule-keeping. We saw a glimpse of this heart-level requirement just a few verses earlier in the Beatitudes. The kingdom people aren't defined by a checklist. Kingdom people are defined by a transformed heart, a heart that's merciful, pure, peacekeeping, and hungry for God. Jesus illustrates this with a radical example later in Matthew 5:41, going the extra mile. Under Roman law, a soldier could compel any Jewish citizen to carry his heavy gear for a mile. It was humiliating and oppressive work. The natural human response when someone interrupted your day and told them to pick up their stuff and carry it for them was resentment. The natural response is to drag your feet for exactly 5,280 feet and then drop the load with contempt. But Jesus says, no, if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Why? Because the first mile fulfilled the legal requirement of the Jewish citizens under Roman rule. The second mile fulfilled the heart of the law of love, grace, and shocking mercy. That second mile is done in freedom, not obligation. It's an act of grace that completely disarms the oppressor. It's meant to ask them why. What motivates this person? What kind of God do they serve that inspires this kind of countercultural love? The second mile is impossible in our own strength. It requires a heart so surrendered to God that his love flows through us, even towards those who persecute us. This is the righteousness that surpasses the Pharisees. It's not about doing more than them. It's about being something completely different than them. It's an internal righteousness born of the Spirit, not an external righteousness achieved by the flesh. No one can do this perfectly except Jesus, and that's the good news. He fulfilled the law perfectly on our behalf, and through faith in him, his righteousness is credited to us. Then, indwelt by his Spirit, we are empowered to live out the true spirit of the law of love. This is just the beginning. In our next session, we'll break down how Jesus applies this principle of fulfillment to our most personal relationships, our anger, our lust, our commitments, showing us that God's concern has always been the state of our hearts. Where are you in this walk? Maybe you're looking at that second mile and saying, I can't do that. I don't want to do that. That's okay. Start by acknowledging that need. Remember the first beatitude, blessed are the poor in spirit. Come to him with your inability, your hunger, your thirst. He is ready to fill you with his Spirit and transform your heart from the inside out. God bless you all for seeking and for longing to understand his word more deeply. If this message encourages you, please like and share this video. It helps others on the same journey find this community. Let me know in the comments what you think. I'd love to hear from you. I'll be back soon. Until then, may God's grace and peace be with you.